all of us, and this is mostly for the listening audience, to listen and get their ideas, basically come up with their own ideas based on what we're doing. The next time we present this, we'll have it laid out. But this one is like, matter of fact, the way I visualize it, the way I kind of envision it, it's like when Huey and Bobby was met at the Freedom and Poverty Center and sat down to discuss how they was what they were going to do as far as how they were going to develop the organization, and came up with that 10-point platform over 3 days. That's what we're basically going to do, but we're going to do it for the listening audience.
If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal cell?
The Panther
The
48.
tribal cell is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to die for.
Tribal
The
cell.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yet unheard.
Peace and power. Once again, this is Panther 48. This is your big brother Syke calling out of Texas. I got sitting with me the other brothers in the Panther 48. Brother Robert Wall Williams calling out of San Diego, California. The current National Chief of Staff for the People's Black Panther Party, headquartered out of Atlanta and chaired by Yangi Nkrumah. Also, he's the chairman of the San Diego chapter of the Black Panther Party and a former chairman of the original new Black Panther Party that was founded and started out of Dallas, Texas under Aaron Michaels. Peace and power, Brother War.
Black power, free the land.
I got sitting with me also calling out of Florida, Brother E, calling straight from his farm, dealing with his chickens and his rabbits. He is the Minister of Information Emeritus of the Panther 48. He was also the Minister of Information of the founding chapter of the new Black Panther Party, founded and headquartered by Aaron Michaels. He's also one of the, I guess you could say, brain trusts, or one of those who came up with much of the ideas for the organizing of the documents and structures of the new Black Panther Party. Peace and power, Brother E.
Greetings.
He's also the one that we consider him the black Joker. Anyway, today we're continuing along with our dialogue. If you have not watched the video, and you'll see this little funny looking thing up here in the corner, or it might be on this side. That's and if you haven't watched the previous video, click on this little thing and it'll take you to our previous video, how to be a Panther. And this set that we're creating or developing came from a question that we was asked by one of our loyal viewers and followers of the channel. And the brother just simply asked, can you brothers give me a book list? And so what we decided to do, we decided to recreate the whole thing. So we started with the process, the Panther process. That's what that video is about, the previous one that y'all need to check out. We started with the Panther process, dealing with the mind state and the reason for becoming a Panther. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sit here and we're not going to give you a developed reading list, because we already have one. War has a reading list for his chapter in San Diego. We still have the original reading list for the new Black Panther Party. And I ain't gonna show all of that because I know our warriors about those skill levels, but we still have reading lists for the original new Black Panther Party headquartered out of Dallas. We have reading lists for the NANM, the New African Nationalist Movement. If you've been following the channel, then you know what all that is. If you don't know what it is, then you need to go watch some of those past videos. So what we decided to do was sit down like three brothers that was developing a chapter and trying to come up with the books that was necessary for his membership to start studying and building on in order that they could be productive Panther. We decided to go that route because we felt like many of you brothers and sisters are dealing with that. Even if your chapter is not new, you haven't went through the processes of developing these documents. So we're going to sit up and we're going to start and we're going to debate, discuss, argue good-heartedly about the books that should be on this list so y'all can see the process in real time. So we're going to start with Brother E, and Brother E is going to give us a quick synopsis of the books that he feels should be on that step one and why. Peace and power, Brother E. The mic's on you.
Thank you, young man. Uh, I, it's difficult for me to nail down any starting book or starting place, any of those things. Just it's not ever been something I excel at. It's kind of a personal thing, and I know these are generalities and whatnot, but I know the idea, the concept for me is more tangible almost. It's more necessary that it be understood. And so any book lists for me have to be very, very deep. Say deep, but they need to contain a lot of cultural context, a lot of reorganizing of ones, or giving folks information around which to reorganize their philosophies and ideas and all of that. Real world example. All these folk that's no, I'm not gonna do that. I'll wait for a little while. You said we're not supposed to argue do all of that, right? I'm supposed to be polite and nice in this part.
We're sitting,
I just say the
at
books. Fuck it. So one of the books, absolutely, most definitely would be the Browder Files, or From the Browder Files by Anthony Browder. Black Students Guide to a Positive Education by Zach Kondo. Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Anthony Browder. Destruction of Black Civilizations, Chancellor Williams. Look at my list. Introduction to African Civilizations, John G. Jackson's. Again, it's the concept for me. It's the idea of having something other than what it is we're attempting to build on. So I don't know if that fits the requirements. Doja, I'm not good at requirements. So, you get back at me when the fun starts.
Okay, one more question before we move to Brother War. Okay, you just named a few books for us. You named From the Browder File by Anthony T. Browder, The Black Student's Guide. What's the name of the book again by Zach Kondo?
Black Student's Guide to a Positive Education.
Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. You named a few, So I want to ask this, and why? Why these books? Why are these books? Why do you think these books are essential? And like you said, it's the concept. So evidently these books must speak to a concept. Why do you think these books are essential toward that first stage?
Well, the concept is, like we've spoken about a few times before, our biggest issue, our biggest roadblock in my mind, and even back then we didn't realize it, but we're attempting to unite groups of individuals. We have a cultural context that teaches us in every day in every way, from our birthday that we have to celebrate, and we'll argue with people over, my daughter and her mother birthday are a day apart. So they're arguing about who's claiming the week. This is my birth week, this is my birth month, and all of these things. So in every day and every way, we're taught to celebrate the individual, which is counterintuitive for an African. It's complete opposite. So as long as we're trying to unify a thing, an individual, which by definition cannot be unified, it's not going to work. So changing that mindset from a little I, to that of we begin to get on the path of understanding the difference between religion and spirituality. Understanding that spirituality is just an extension of our culture, that it all plays the same role. But we can't even get to matter. See, I'm not going to get in all my business, see, Psych, because some of this, I'm coming for you later because I know you're going to say something different. So you're trying to get me to expose all of my playing cards right now. But I'm not going to let you do that.
I'm just sitting you at a table. We're in the table in the Martin Luther King Center at the library, developing an organization. So there's nobody to argue and fight with. So what I am trying to do is I am trying to get my brother E off of his predictivity. See, I predict you, and I know that you're coming for the fight. So I am trying to extinguish you from the jump so that we can actually get to the building process of it. So you're right. I do have a strategy for you. That's why I started you first, because you better reacting. I started you proactively.
Yeah, I'm gonna proact. I want to fight.
Brother War, same thing. Let's go to the step one of of the book list, you know, what you got on it, why you got these books on it, things of that nature.
All right. So, first book I got, and this is not necessarily in any order, but the Complete 101 Collection by John Maxwell, Mind Manipulation by Dr. Ha Ha Lung, the From the Broader Files by Anthony Broader, Breaking the Curse of Willie Lynch, The Science of Slave Psychology, Alvin Morrow, Autobiography of Malcolm X, Alex Haley, African People and European Holidays by Shango, Brainwash, Challenging the Myth of Black Inferiority by Tom Burrell. Number 8 would be When the World Was Black, Part 1 and Part 2. So that's number 8 and number 9 by Supreme Understanding. And number 10 would be Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. And the reason why I have those particular books go into the fact that when I deal with recruits, the first thing we jump into is critical thinking. So the first thing I want to do is make sure a person is a critical thinker. And being a critical thinker, I want them to actually ask themselves why they want to be a Panther. And asking themselves why they want to be a Panther, we have to go over the aspects of psychological warfare, scientific thinking, the different things that a person may not be aware of in regards to struggle, in regards to the basics on certain things to know about African history that they should know, and also dealing with discipline, which is why we obviously cover something like the Autobiography of Malcolm X, to cover I would call the transformation a person needs to go through, and realize that we can't be crystallized. So just basically in a nutshell, those are the books and why I would suggest those starting off.
Anyway, so here's my list, my step 1. And what I called my step 1 is, what is a Panther and what does a Panther represent? That's what I called my step 1. And I took a page from y'all book. When last time we talked, we said 10 books. So I wrote down 10 books. The 10 is Black Panther Speaks by Philip S. Forner, Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton, Asada, an Autobiography by Asada Shakur, Message to the People by Marcus Garvey, From the Broader File by Anthony Broader, Huey, Spirit of a Panther by David Hilliard, The Autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley, Message to the Warriors by M. Walamu K. Bomani Baruti, The Judas Factor, The Plot to Kill Malcolm X by Carl Evans, Modern Black Nationalism from Marcus Garvey to Louis Farrakhan by William L. Vandenberg, and coming soon, P-48 Re-Evolution Manual, The Ultimate Guide to Self-Revolution by the Panther 48. Those are the books that I put on my step 1.
I didn't sanction that.
And the reason why I use these books to explain, I always quote Black Panther Speaks by Philip S. Forner. Not that it's the most elaborate book on Panther ideology, but it has so many different views. The women, Fred Hampton, Huey P. Newton, Eldridge Clee, got a lot of people in there. Bobby Seale, they got their trial transcripts. It has a lot of different concepts and different ideas, and it allows you to see how the party's ideology developed over time. It allows you to see that, even the failures and the mistakes that they get into toward the end of the book. But that's why I think the book is a very beautiful book for understanding Panther thinking. Revolutionary Suicide, self-explanatory. It gets into those same concepts and those ideals. And he just made a nice short where he used quotes from the Revolutionary Suicide that Huey said, and you have a lot of fruit like that inside of the book. Autobiography of Asada, same reason. Asada, I know for E, his is Angela Davis. Mine is Asada Shakur, one of my favorite Black women in history. Message to the People by Marcus Garvey. E talked about it before, it's self-explanatory. The Message to the People was actually a book that Marcus Garvey wrote as a manual for his organization, UNIA. It was for the leadership. It was never even meant to be published, and any local joker could get it. The book, if you look at the book, it talks about economics, elocution, basically the art of speaking. It talks about all those different variations that are needed for an organization to be successful. And if you've done any kind of research, as Malcolm said, history is best equipped to reward our research. And I'm not trying to go too long, y'all, but when you'll realize that the ideal for writing Message to the Black Man came from that. Came from that message to the people from Marcus Garvey. You'll realize this, you'll see it, you'll understand it. And that's why I got the Judas Factor, because in the book, The Judas Factor, they give you that history and show you how that bloodline is tied to each other. Huey, Spirit of the Panther, same reason. Broderfile, for the same reason. Both of y'all got it on y'all list, because I do understand the necessity of understanding our who we are as a people. But my step one started with a basic training, essentially, of revolutionary ideology, revolutionary ideas and concepts, a lot of Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, and Panther ideology and history. A lot of my books on my step one has that in it.
All right, I want to bring something up real quick in regards to my list. The reason why I want to say this is because I think it's important to note that out of us three, I'm the one that actually has a chapter operating in the field. And I'm bringing that up to make this one point here. And one thing we didn't necessarily say, we're dealing with more or less skill levels when we talk about training Panthers, or someone wants to train or develop themselves to be a Panther. And all we're talking about right now in today's discussion is books that we believe should be on skill level number one. When I talk about skill level number one, and not only that, it's a certain stages. Within skill level number one, we got 3 different stages. With the stages that we got, we call it the spirit of the Panther, the shadow of the Panther, the embodiment of Panther. It's the embodiment, spirit, and the shadow. The embodiment first is what I call my first level book list. Then when we go to the spirit of the Panther, that's when we actually I have books that are written about the Panthers or written by Panthers. And then when we go into the shadow of the Panther, that's when we start talking about our combative books. But to me, when we talk about the embodiment, the first thing I want to address is what made you think you want to be a Panther. And in addressing that, I don't actually want to talk about really much of anything that has to do with the general history or the general knowledge of what you think is a Panther. So therefore, I didn't have a single Panther-oriented book on my first one. Why? Because if you're joining to be a Panther, you're gonna be reading those Panther books all day long, every day. That's just gonna be something that's gonna be required. So we jump into that when we go into the spirit of the Panther. But the first element that we deal with is the embodiment. In the embodiment, I need to make sure that you're able to be in the right mind frame to even be able to be teachable. Make sure you're in the right mind frame to actually want to serve the people, to make sure you have sincerity and that you really know what you want to be a part of. And so oftentimes, most of the people, I ain't gonna say most, I'm gonna say a high percentage of the people that start the recruitment training don't make it past the first 2 weeks because they came in with the wrong mindset. They came in thinking that a Panther was something, this fabricated concept that they got off YouTube as to what a Panther actually is. And they came in finding out they're gonna have to do some study, that there's homework involved, and they stopped showing up. As soon as they learned they started to learn something, they stopped showing up. So that's why the first thing I want to deal with is critical thinking. So for the most part, in thinking about that, that's why we start off with the complete collection, the 101 collection by John Maxwell. Because what John Maxwell does is he breaks down leadership. He breaks down certain things that a person needs to know about themselves as a leader. He calls you to evaluate yourself as a leader. He starts off with attitude. In the 101 collection, the first thing that he gets over is what he calls attitude. And that goes into the psychology behind the individual and your proper attitude for whatever it is that you're trying to work on, getting you to see yourself in the mirror, how self-reflection. And then self-improvement is the second part of that book. And then from there, you go into leadership, relationships, success, teamwork, equipment, and mentoring. So these are all skills that are necessary for somebody to want to be an organizer. And the whole point of being a Panther is that we want to teach the community through a show and response of what it means to be a liberated people, what it means to be working towards liberation, what it means to realize that we want to be self-determined. So all of these things are leadership skills. So the first thing I want to know is that, are you in the right headspace to want to be a leader? And when I say a leader, that means be a servant first and foremost. Are you in the right mind and headspace to want to serve the people? So critical thinking, critical consciousness, critical analysis, and basic psychology, all of that is going to be in my first class. Now, once we got that behind us, or we got that rolling, not I can say behind us, but once we got that ball rolling, now I want to introduce you into some Panther specific books, because you in the right space now to be able to take in the concepts and the principles of what separates Panthers from other so-called revolutionaries or leaders in the community. So I just wanted to drop that real quick.
Okay, oh yeah, I thought you had something on your mind. All right. I can understand that viewpoint, War. I can understand that viewpoint. Allow me the opportunity to give a contrasting viewpoint to that though. Remember, we at the library, we sitting at the table and we discussing this and trying to figure out what we want to do with our reading list. Remember that. So I don't think that we should be reading Panther books all day, every day. I kind of got a difference of opinion on that. See, I think this is what I think, and this is where I see it. The reason I use what I chose as my step one is because, and I know that this is over almost 30 years old. So I know that this is not still in use, but I still like this format. And I'm going to talk about it just a little bit, skill level 1, 2, and 3. They're going to talk about it because that was public, as I remember. It was the other stuff that wasn't public. So skill level 1 essentially dealt with your initiation into the organization and understanding the bylaws, the moral ways, the folk ways, the culture of the organization itself. Still, skill level 2 then dealt with understanding or comprehending that history, the things that have been done against us as a people, the organization, who we were as a people, things of that nature that gives us an understanding of what kind of things we're fighting against, we're dealing with, what we're going to have to wrestle against. Skill level 2 went into that. And then skill level 3 went into organizing and training leadership, training troops, establishing leadership, developing the central committee, things of that nature. So skill level 1, 2, and 3 went in that order. And I remember why we did that, why we decided that those skill levels needed to go into that. And I don't know if y'all remember this because it's been so long and y'all a little bit, whole lot older. So y'all can be going through slight dementia to a certain degree. So y'all might not remember some of this stuff. However, one of the things that we did, we kind of went off, we were kind of building on the Marine Smart book. I don't know if y'all remember that. We had that Marine Smart book. And one of the first things in the Marine Smart book, they teach the Marine to do is how to be a Marine. That's the first, that's their first skill level in the Marine Smart book. They were teaching them how to be a Marine. Then they developed everything else. See, and that's the step I went with it. I went into, and y'all convinced me of this. You two brothers convinced me of this because when last we talked about it, and y'all talked about the Messiah complex. And I was saying that, Panthers coming in and having a thirst to learn, that ain't the Messiah complex because they not following a man or a person. Like we've seen so much in the past, people looking to this great anointed leader to guide them to liberation. We not, I don't think those type of Panthers are looking at that. And y'all so eloquently expressed to me that actually they are. The Panther Party itself is their God complex, it's their messianism. The Panther Party themselves becomes the thing. Some people come into the party, y'all was saying, for the purpose of just being able to say, man, I'm a Panther. Or at one time I donned that uniform. I was a Black Panther. I stood in the streets. I was doing work in the field. I had boots on the ground, and that's the Messiah to them, And so one of the things you have to do, I believe, is you have to appeal to people where they at in order to take them where you think they need to go. You can't see them where they at and say, no, you're in the wrong place. We need to go over here. Because most of the time they're where they're at because that's where they think they need to be. So you need to use that ground to develop the consciousness that you would like to see. And that's why I started where I started. And if you look at the books, and the books don't stick you in a Panther thought process. Because another thing we have to understand is that Huey didn't make none of this stuff up. None of it was made up. He didn't come up with it. He didn't have this valuable insight. Huey was studying. Period, point blank. There is not many things. When Huey said, war is politics with bloodshed, politics is war without bloodshed. When he explained that, Huey didn't make that term and concept up. Huey got that from Carl von Clausewitz in the book On War. It's one of the premier books that they have to study at West Point. That along with Nikolai Machiavelli's The Prince. Those two books are considered. I know y'all probably think about the Art of War, but I'm talking about European society. Those are considered they're staples of war strategy and war ideas. Huey was quoting Van Clausewitz. And if you hadn't read Clausewitz, then you didn't know he was quoting Van Clausewitz. So a lot of the ideas that they go into are not Huey's ideas. You know, there are ideas that have already existed that we study, we build on, and then we share and express to the people. And that's what I see the importance of these books. Message to the Warrior by Brother Baruti. I ain't gonna say his whole name, but Message to the Warriors. In this book, let me show you a little bit. Let me show you a little bit. Since E hasn't got triggered yet, then I feel that I have a little leeway to go into things like this. In this book, Message to the Warriors, again, we talking about step one, the first steps, not the marathon, but step one. He breaks down what a nation is, what nationalism is, and what a nationalist is. Then he got chapters called The Warrior's Enemies, because he's telling you, he's essentially, the book is based on this basic concept. He said, first of all, you have to understand that we are at war. He said, and if our history has not taught you that, then you haven't done enough studying of our history and what we have dealt with since we have been in this society. You have to understand that we are at war. And if you understand that, then any able-bodied Black person in the society should accept the culture of a warrior. And so in the book, he talks about, he got a chapter, The Warrior's Enemies, the warrior's behavior, the warrior's attitude, the warrior's appearance, the warrior's words, the warrior's compliment, the warrior's preparedness, the warrior's action, the warrior's accountability, the warrior's education, the warrior's religion, the warrior's rules. So he goes into basically a framework of the different values that a warrior should have. And if you understand that you are at war, then you have to operate in a certain way as a warrior. You have to operate in this way. In many of the books like Asada, this is not, when you read in this book, you're not reading it from the perspective of some high thinking revolutionary scientist preaching the revolutionary gospel to you. You're able to watch the development of a young sister who developed into a revolutionary scientist. You get to see the formula. She even talked about one time when they went to visit California for the first time and get to see the original Panther headquarters. They was out at a park high with everybody else smoking weed. Then when the police came, you know, they were shook, they were paranoid, they didn't know what to do. And it was some Asian, I can't remember the organization, but it was an Asian organization that had to guide them to safety and help them escape the pigs. And she said she was so embarrassed. Here she is considering herself a real revolutionary, and she's out high at the damn park. She can't even function right. You know what I'm saying? And that changed her thinking as far as dealing with that type of element in the field like that. How can I consider myself a real revolutionary and these Maoists who are on point have to take us and guide us? To me, it's more than just about waxing poetic and reminiscing on who the Panthers were, but I see that development in those books. You can see the development. You can see and understand the Bridal File. I ain't even got to explain to y'all why the Bridal File is on there. But these books, you get to see this growth and you get to see the development, even in Modern Black Nationalism, which truthfully, everybody that they talk about in the book, Modern Black Nationalism, are not in what we understand as the definition, Black nationalists. They're not. They got Pan-Africanists in the book. They have black nationalists in the book. They got black liberation theologists in the book. They have all these different. The book is just named modern black nationalism, but you get to see the development of all these different organizations. They go into Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. They go into many of those church organizations, the African Methodist Episcopalian they go into all of those different things. And I think that all of those are what add into to the development of the proper mind state of a revolutionary. The Black Panther Party's original platform is in there. The Nation of Islam's platform is in there. All of these different groups are there. They're all there. And I think that those things become important for the development of and the Judas Factor. I love that book. And that book shows you, we've had a lot of people, and I'm going to pass the mic to E. We've had a lot of people, and you know, I was away from the party for 17 years. I've been out of since Brother War say he's the only one that has an active chapter with boots on the ground right now. Since War said that, since War decided to say that, and War is the only person that has an active chapter with boots on the ground right now, and I know that. I've seen that myself. I come off vacation, come from Utah, coming out of the mountains, and an 8-hour drive into California. And the first thing we got to do before we get a chance to rinse our mouth out is get on a protest line in front of the police station. And Ward's chapter was already out there, you know, blocking the gate for the police to come in and out. So yes, he got an active chapter with boots on the ground. But all of us have been in active chapters with boots on the ground, and we've been those boots, and we've developed this before, and we've made a few mistakes, and I believe in our past, and those mistakes are supposed to show us how to come at this thing at another way or at a different way. And whenever we talk about step one, I think we're talking about the elementary steps, and then we go into a graduation of development. You know, that's what I truly believe. And with that, go ahead, E.
We got what do you call it? We got drafted twice by the same guy into 2 different damn chapters of the shit. That's real fucked up. However, let me say this about that. A few things. First of all, I don't want to go about this. And we must have, because I remember we had these conversations, and you know, when the whole Marine book, because this seems like an echo in my head. When you talk about Marine book and Warriors, was it Warriors, Spirit Code? All of those things are well and good.
Message to the Warriors.
Message to the Warrior. But and all of those things are well and good, but I think that they're very assumptive. They don't take into account who it is we're really dealing with. War. If I'm writing a computer code, because I want to program this phone, a new app to do such and such and such. Matter of fact, I'm making an app to list to me all the chickens by name that I have in the backyard, right? I write the code out, do. Perfect coding, no errors. I've checked it. I run it through a checker, da. Boom. I hook it up, fire it up. When it kicks back the list, it gives me a list of a bunch of rabbits. It tells me you have 25 rabbits, this name, female. I'm like, that's not what I asked you for. I wanted a list of chickens. So I run it again. It gives me the same list of these 25 rabbits, name this, sex that, all of that shit, right? What's the issue? What's the problem?
Because it gave you exactly what you told it.
No.
Based on the code.
Based on what?
Based on what you wrote, what code you wrote.
Negatory. The code is fine. And it gave back information. But that database that it was pulling from was corrupt. In that database, there are no chickens. There are only rabbits. And I think that that's one of the places that we're fucking up. The database that exists in the minds of the people is not a database of Black power. When somebody comes into the party and they say Black power, and I say, what does that mean? It means because they don't know what the hell Black power is. They may have studied some Black history, but Black history goes back to the founding of this country. or our founding in this country, when they brought us over is what I'm saying. You understand. It doesn't go back to a time when African folks, Black folks, were living like Black folks live. Cite thousands of years ago, before white people showed up on the scene. No white people anywhere, none. Ain't nothing but Africans, just us. Who, when it came time to teach the children, what were the people that taught the children?
What you mean, what were they?
What were they? Were they African? Were they white? What were they?
I mean, self-explanatory. They was African. This is the only
It was
thing on the
African.
planet. Yes.
When somebody got sick, what was the doctor that came to see him and take care of?
African.
They was Africans.
Yes.
So at that point in time, you might say, you know, before white people were around, we were living free, right? I mean, that's kind of what I would interpret that is. We're doing our thing. We're, you know, taking care of the children and making sure the sick people are straight, no orphans, no old folks homes, nothing like that. We were just being African with no interference from anybody. Fast forward, war. When Hugh and them, Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, hoorah. When they instituted these programs like Feed the Children, who was feeding them children?
Black people.
Black folk. When somebody needed an ambulance to get to the doctor and they went through the Black Panther Party Self-Defense ambulance program, who took them to the hospital?
Black people.
So Black people providing health care or assisting in providing health care, and they had doctors and whatnot too, and feeding and teaching the children. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. It sounds to me like they were doing what we were doing back in Africa before white people were around. But because the database, because they were at odds with the whole cultural thing and that part of Malcolm that got, you know, cleaved off with the US organization and all of that, the database, all they had was Marx. All they had was Mao. All they had was reference points outside of, we've been doing this. So instead of saying we're free in this moment, we call them survival programs. Why do we call them survival programs? Because in our minds, freedom, this amorphous, ambiguous thing called freedom that nobody to this day can fucking define, for them was defined by somebody else's perspective. And so when you survive, what are you really doing? You're making it through until help arrives to get you somewhere. So in their minds, and anybody that calls them survival programs, they were surviving, hanging out, making do until somebody came along, until freedom came along, not realizing that they were free. Feeding your children yourself, that's freedom. Taking care of your old folks and the orphans, so-called orphans, doing for yourself. Ain't that what we, self-determination, ain't that the point? And we were doing it. But instead of saying in this moment, Black Panther Party for Self-Defense states that we are free. We're gonna feed our children. We're not surviving, we're free. This is what we do. This is what freedom looks like. And defining that for the masses of the people, in that moment, we call them survival, again, waiting for that Messiah of whatever the hell freedom is, and whoever's gonna give it to us to come along. And I think the approach to the book lists have to address that issue. The warrior, the message to the warrior, the Marine handbook, all of those operate from the premise that what you're bringing in are people who have already been pre-programmed with a certain level of unity to the cause. Warriors do not begin their warrior culture training once they enter warrior training. The culture has already been established. Now we're fine-tuning it for a particular job within our community, within our culture. Samurais were no more or less dedicated to their art than the ones who in the villages that were growing the rice, because they were dedicated to the principle of the masses of the people of perfecting whatever it is you do. You're an archer, you're a swordsman, you're a scholar, you're a boots on the ground, whatever it is. They had a culture that was taught to them from day one to perfect whatever the fuck you do. Period. That's the culture. The fighting is not the culture. And so if we jump in and start trying to teach people, hey, this is what a Panther does, this is where a Panther goes, they're pulling from a database of data while we're trying to put it into a particular formation, but we keep getting lists of rabbits instead of the list of the chickens that we keep asking for. We're asking for, let's get Black power. Well, I don't know what that is because I have no reference point for Black power. So without that reference point, we keep referring back to somebody else's definition. And when you try to, it's like the part of the reason that Rome fell was mercenaries. Ideally, you don't want somebody from Palestine, born and raised, grew up there their whole life, to come over and join your military. Ideally, you don't. Ideally, you want soldiers whose minds you have developed and morphed and worked in a particular direction, so that they will be dedicated, not just the fight, not just the dude next to him in the trenches, but to the actual cause, the principle, the Messiah up above, around them. That Messiah of self. And if we don't initiate that when someone comes in, then we're also being short-sighted, because how many of those brothers and sisters came into the party, Stokely, only to use the party for what it's for, to attempt to organize for the masses and to develop the individual to go on and establish greater things? Or not even greater things, but other things, broader things, to build on what it is they found within the party. And I think that that's a nuance we have to be aware of and have to teach to. Folks are not coming in my mind, are not coming in to join the party. They're coming into a revolutionary university to help them figure out where it is they fit in the struggle as a whole. Because the party is meaningless. The party is irrelevant. The nation is irrelevant. The church is irrelevant. It's about the people. And so we have to get us back to our definition as to what the people are, so that we know what we're fighting for, and so that we're dedicated to that fight, not to the party. I don't want motherfuckers dedicated to the party. I want motherfuckers that are dedicated to their growth and development as a part of the community for the betterment of the community. You understand?
Now, here's your problem. Here's your problem.
Come on.
And I can agree with that. And this is not a battle, E. We're not finna do
That's
that.
a battle. You said the process. This is the process.
We're going to develop a functional reading list and
You
not
damn
go
straight.
war with each other. But
Straight.
I think y'all are missing it. I think y'all are missing it. I think
This
y'all
is
are
the
missing it.
process. This is the process. This is what we did. This is what we did. You know it. Our best books came and lists came out of us doing this.
Can I talk?
Go ahead. My bad. My bad.
You know how I just let you talk? Can I do
Yeah,
that?
I caught that. I was like, oh, he want me to shut up now. Let me talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is something I think y'all are missing. This is something I think that y'all are missing. Oh, that sounds beautiful and lovely. And, you know, in a perfect world, on the square, we could roll like that. But the truth is, that's bullshit. It just is. Let's just be honest. No. Let me finish. Yes, I curse because I wanted that to have a lot of meaning. That is bullshit, because people are not coming into the party, you know, to serve the people, and we're going to float off into this ideal of code. It's just not going to happen. You have to understand where we're at, and we have to build where we're at to get to where we're trying to go. The average person, y'all told me this. Y'all got me to believe this. I was jogging last weekend. I had y'all in my ears, and y'all told me this, what I'm about to say. So if you go against this, you're going against your own damn self. You said this. You said the party, these people was not coming into the party because they actually have bought into these ideas. They're coming into the party because they bought into the party. Did what y'all told me. Did what y'all told me. So I structured my reading list based on that understanding. Because it would be insane to structure my reading list based on anything else, because that means I'm not basing it on reality. I'm basing it on what I want, what I feel, what I would like to see. But reality is not any of those things. Reality is what reality is. And you are right. You're 100% correct that the party is supposed to be a revolutionary university to develop the minds of the members that come into the party. But you have to get them to buy into it first. Let me show you an example. And I'm going to use a gangbanging culture to explain it. let's say you have people joining the blood organization. They're joining the Bloods because of the history of the Bloods, the look of the Bloods, they love that whole ideal of camaraderie that comes from the Bloods, and they believe that being a Blood will make them a stronger person. Fact, just a fact. It ain't because of undying loyalty for the Blood organization, and that may come later. But every human being that makes its first decision makes that decision based off a selfish idea. They're trying to see how this will benefit me in the long run. Period, point blank. Now, once this person has joined the Blood organization and bought in to what a Blood is, then what the Bloods give that person will then accept. That person will then start to manifest out of their own character. They'll start wearing the red head rags that come from the beauty shop that women used to tie their hair up with. They'll start wearing them as a flag. They'll start wearing red shoestring. They'll start using the Blood conversation. They'll start using the dialogue. They even took it in prison and added Swahili to it. So Bloods, you done heard this before. Bloods called, I had to explain this to a lot of brothers in prison because they'll use the term Damu, and didn't even know where it came from. Damu is a Swahili word for blood. You know, they started integrating Swahili and Afrocentrism into the Blood organization, just utilizing the Blood organization itself became the conduit. It became the medium to allow culture to seek in and actually seek into the brain and the minds of the people who had dedicated themselves to the Blood organization. The same thing happened with the Crips. They used the organization, the Crip organization. They said that, I think it was Monster Cody in his book. He said that in California prisons, after a certain time, they no longer use English. They would only use Swahili. That's why Tupac said it in the song, conversating with my comrades, speaking Swahili, because he was speaking to that culture. Here it is, a gang culture have actually accepted and integrated African concepts and ideals through the organization itself being the medium. And that's where I started with step one. I understand that in order to be a true revolutionary, you have to be bigger than the Panther Party. You have to be. I understand that. But for the most part, the average person joining the party, you're not supposed to ingrain them with these supreme ideals out the gate. You have to start at an elementary stage and graduate. And one of the things that's going to catch most of the people who join the party's attention, if their attention can be caught, is understanding what the party is, getting them to buy into the party. And I do agree 100% with everything y'all saying. You have to lead them toward critical thinking. You have to lead them toward understanding who we are. Another example, E. While I was in prison, there's a few terms I stopped using. One, I stopped using white folks. I stopped using that term. The reason I stopped using that term because I understand the concept of inoculation. Our people have been so trained. We talked about the brainwashing, but it's like y'all missing it. I swear to God, it be seeming to me like y'all will say it, but y'all don't understand how real it is. Don't you understand that certain words have triggers? Our people have been so conditioned that when they hear white folk, they stop listening to what you say. When they hear you say white folks, they just stop listening. Oh, that sound like one of them old angry, broke ass niggas that's just mad. That's what you sound like, even though that ain't where you coming from. So I started using European because I'm talking about the same thing, but the European has not been set as a trigger in the average person's mind in order to respond with that anti behavior. It hasn't been set. White folk have, because we've used white folks and white people so long that whenever the average black person, they can have on a black uniform, the average black person, when they hear you say, when white people, oh, he's blaming white people again, that's the trigger. That's what they say. You start saying Europeans and they sit back and they listen, because that is not a trigger for them. You start saying African, even though I know 100% fact without a shadow of doubt in my mind, that we are African people. But we're not trying to liberate me. We're trying to liberate the people. And you say African to the average black person, they can have on a black uniform, they ain't ready to accept what you're talking about. They're not ready, they're not ready to accept it. They mind is like, no, even if we are an African, we're a new African. We can't be, no, the triggers are there. So you have to talk in the language that they understand. So I started back using black, not because I believe that that's a better identity. I know African is a better identity. but I had to speak to the people I was talking to in a language that they understood. They didn't know who I was talking about when I was saying African. They thought I was talking about the African guards that was walking around the prison. That's who they thought I was talking about. They did not understand who I was talking about when I was using the term African. But when I used black, they knew it was them. Then I showed them how there's no way you could be black if it wasn't for Africa. Then I tied it in and allowed them to make the mental connection. And that's kind of like what I'm talking about with my skill level, with what I mean, step one of the book list that I brought. Not that I disagree with anything y'all are saying. I believe those things are on point. But the thing is, I think that y'all don't realize how slow we have to go to get to where you're trying to get to. I don't think you could start the average person off with an Afrocentric education. I don't think you can start them out. I think that you have to start them where they're at. And the reason I brought like Message to the Warriors. In this book, he's using the term warrior to give you a code of, I guess you could call it a code of ethics. Warrior could be taken away, and he could use message to the revolutionaries, or message to the freedom fighters, or message to the community activists. And then he used the word warrior to explain to you how a community activist, a revolutionary, to explain to you, well, you can't see it, who the revolutionaries' enemies are. He got a chapter where he tell you who the enemies are, who you should be waiting, who you should be looking for, the behavior that the revolutionary or the community activist should have. It's not just about being a fighter, but one of the things I think we have to understand, no matter, and we all have always envisioned a Panther being an intellectual as well, being as Huey said, that the gorilla is the perfect man, because the gorilla is both the military fighter and the political theoretician. So we visualize developing Panthers that have that. But let's be honest, we haven't seen that many Panthers that have that skill. We have not seen it. We haven't seen it. So that's something that has to be developed over time. But one of the things that we do have to accept, and that we do know, and that we do comprehend, understand, and mentally are able to evaluate, is that most people who come into the party are coming into the party because of the warrior culture of the party. So you have to speak to that militancy. The party is an organization that is known more for its militancy than even its political understanding and education. And if we go to the average Panther member, hell, we had the new chairman of the new Black Panther Party on a show, and even he said that the reason he came into the party when he first came into the party was for the weapons training. He said that he was more into the weapons training than the studying. And part of why he broke away from the new Black Panther Party and started the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, because he was more interested in the weapons training. You know what I'm saying? It took him years later to come back full circle and go back into the new Black Panther Party and become the chairman. But the fact of the matter is, that's what we've seen a lot of. We had people that we have people praising, saying they wouldn't read anything about dead people. So we understand that one of the things that draws people into the party is the militancy. I'm saying with step one, we need to get them to people think they know what a Panther is. The average person think they know what. I was telling War earlier when we was having our conference call earlier this morning that I hadn't really I had not really studied Huey P. Newton before I went to prison. I was a damn chief of staff in a chapter and had not really studied Huey P. Newton. I hadn't really studied him. And I know a lot of times y'all be thinking to yourself that I got this obsession and this love affair with Huey, and it's not that. It's that while I was incarcerated, I started reading Huey and I started understanding the ideals more. I started understanding those concepts. And I'm the type of reader that I don't just read Brother E. I'm going to read who Brother E read. You know, and that's what happened with my track down studying Huey. I was reading all the people Huey was quoting. I went to read them. And I agree with you, E. Huey and them, because you're in America. I don't know if y'all understand this, man. I don't know if y'all get it. You are in America. Huey P. Newton was born in America, educated by America. So most of the stuff that Huey was spitting, he was quoting Europeans. That's who he was quoting. And he was doing that because of his condition, because where he's at and where he grew up at and where his ideas and concepts came from. Most of us do that. All of us do that. You know what I'm saying? because of where we're at. He's in America. So my understanding or what I'm saying is you have to get them to buy into your organization first. And then you use your organization as a vehicle to lead them down the direction of to take them, to actually drive them to where you're trying to go with them. And that's one of the things that I realized. I truly felt like I realized that was a mistake we was making, not doing that out here. So I started doing that in there, and I got more. I got a better reception when I did it that way. I got a better reception. It was some war I always said in the back of my head, you have to trick the people to their liberation. I guarantee you, if you go to the average Black person that was born, raised, and educated by America and tell them, you join the Panther Party, let me give you this African-centered education. Most of them gonna be like, man, we didn't leave nothing in Africa. We're battling against not only people that have been miseducated, that don't understand who we are. We're battling against a people who had their complete taste for who we are ripped away from them. That's what we're dealing with. And so that's where I developed my reading list from, with that understanding in mind. Not that I think that what y'all are saying is any less valuable. Hey, it would benefit us more and probably save us a couple of years if we could just move to that step. But the truth is, brother, and I hate to be the one to have to tell you this, we're not there. We can't skip.
No doubt. And coming from the perspective that you stated, I can completely agree with everything you said. It makes perfect sense. But you all have an issue that I don't. I'm not recruiting anybody. Don't care if anybody joins the party. I understand that this is what needs to be. And for me, it's a weeding out process. There are certain cats who back in the day wore, and I'm not going to call them names out of respect, but who didn't want to read shit written by dead people. Okay, number one, that's a problem for a lot of the shit on our reading list, period. He was wired up about the guns and all that shit. He loved it. But fuck a book, any book, Huey, anybody, they don't want to read it because they did, he don't want it. So for me, it becomes a weeding out point because that same individual later on had major issues that could have fucked up a lot of shit for the party, for the chapter. And
let me say this also, I got to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
That same dude eventually became a person that soaked up reading to the point to where what happened was, because of his background, which he was dealing with some psychological issues, but because of his background, he actually became more read than most of the Panthers that was in there.
No doubt. And that's beautiful. That's great. But my point, there you go. But my point still remains. Coming in, there's a weeding out. This is what needs to happen. This is, especially if you're talking about a book list. I'm guessing that the book list ain't something we go out and just hand out to people. I don't know. Y'all might. I don't know. Like I said, I've never been the recruiter. Don't care to be the recruiter. I gives a shit. But for me, a book list is not a recruitment tool. By the time you come in and we sit down and have a conversation about a book list, you've already accepted to some degree that there's going to be some type of work, reading a book, marching, whatever it is. You've already, acquiesced to that shit. If you're talking about, and especially for that reason, because in my mind, to train and educate somebody into the organizing and all of that, I mean, all we have to do really is look at what's going on with these protests and shit. We got a bunch of Black folk who's showing up at this protest yelling, it's the same struggle, when it's not the same struggle. Palestinians have a land. We ain't got that. Palestinians have the language. We ain't got that. When these Palestinians go to these protests and shit and get locked up, they're going to get bailed out, period. They're going to have uncles and cousins and whoever who going to put their shops in the Black neighborhood, borrow against them, take money out the kid, whatever they got to do to make sure that their kid gets out. When they get out, they're going to get free legal representation, because what better way for a Muslim attorney to show his love for Allah than to do charity work for somebody who was in the midst of the actual fight. So they're taken care of. What we're going to end up with is another fly-ass jingle and a GoFundMe page. That's all we're going to get out of it, because we have no cultural integrity. We have no desire to help each other. We have a desire to live in that moment and to bring somebody who has that as their motivation into a position of leadership when they have no reference point of anything but the European or whatever we want to call them to bring somebody in and develop them into leadership position without that frame of reference of self. It's just doing the same shit we've been doing. We've had people get into leadership positions, and what they do, they make a bank. What they do, they fuck every other person, male, female, otherwise that comes along. They do something to, or a number of things to embiggen themselves, to come up on themselves. Why? Because their cultural reference is that of the individual. Even if I'm gonna do something for the people, I have to know what I'm getting out of it. Am I gonna get a house? Am I gonna get a check with this? Am I gonna get a book deal? Am I gonna get some notoriety? Some coochie, something? I gotta get something out of this, because we operate from that mindset, because we have no concept even of these cats. That's one of the reasons I could never get in with the whole walking around saying Black Power, because these motherfuckers don't mean what I mean. They're being reactionary, just saying some shit, having no concept, no clue, and then to take them along and move them into some leadership position is not a good idea. That's the shit that we have been doing and continue to do. So, but like I said, I don't disagree with anything that Sykes said from that perspective. It's just two different perspectives. I don't have the shackle and chain of worrying about my membership being upset or some other organization we have a alliance with being pissed off because we did such. I don't have that problem. So again, my book list is going to be the absolute bare minimum. I'm not bargaining with Black, white, African, anybody else. This is what the fuck I think it needs to happen. You can either get on it or you can get the fuck out. Don't care.
All right, let me get my turn. So in order to put this in a better perspective for the listening audience, what I'm referencing when we talk about a book list is a book list that's based on 6 weeks training. And I'm not expecting the person to read all 30 books or more that's going to be on this book list within 6 weeks. But what it is an evolving book list based upon going back and learning these things that you have been introduced to through skill level number 1, which is your 6 week training. In saying that, the first 2 weeks is what we call, again, the embodiment. The second 2 weeks is the spirit. The third 2 weeks is the shadow. In the embodiment, I want to introduce them to the fact that stepping into this role, you have to realize that it ain't what you thought it was. So that's why I talked about that one-on-one collection book. One of the quotes I want to say from that is, in one-on-one, the attitude section, one of the quotes is, change your thought pattern. That which holds your attention determines your actions. We are what we are because of what dominates, what dominating thought occupies our mind. And with that, that opens up the ability to talk about the next concept that we introduce them to, which again, going into critical thinking, we talk about neurolinguistic programming, which brings you to the concept of mind manipulation by Dr. Ha Lung. The reason why I cover that is because they have to know that they have been mentally fucked. And I want to give them examples of how they've been mentally fucked. Now that I've given them examples, I can introduce them to next book, The Broader Files. That book basically is going to go into the areas that he is talking about and let them know that they ain't African, why they hate themselves, and the problem with that. Then the next one that you evolve to from that would be either Breaking the Curse of Willie Lynch or Autobiography of Malcolm X, to show them the transition and the transformation that a person took from being a nigga to a god, so to speak, and realizing that this is where we are, and this is, and there is a evolutionary re-evolution path that must be taken for each and every person that calls themselves wanting to operate as a Panther. And then I talk about the book Brainwashing, which gives you a little bit more concept, but at the same time, that one focused specifically on the modern day aspects of the things that are going on right now in terms of psychological warfare in the Black community. And then African people and European holidays is there because I want to snatch them out of their comfort zone and thinking that they're gonna be a Panther when they put on their beret, and then later on they're gonna go to a Christmas party. Later on they're gonna go to Easter egg hunt. Later on they're gonna do this BS that puts them right back in that same mindset that is contradictory to what it is that they're supposed to be evolving from. Wretched of the Earth, because it breaks down aspects of revolutionary struggle through from a philosophical concept and getting us to see just how, again, destroyed we are. And all of these things that we're talking about now just has to do with the first 2 weeks of the 6 weeks. The third week is when we go, I particularly go into talking about specific Panther books. But mind you, in the first 2 weeks, we're still talking about the platform. We're still talking about concepts of freedom. We're still talking about elements of the local objectives. And so we're still going into Panther information and protocol, but I'm not emphasizing Panther books yet, because I want to get them into a realization that they have to be in a right mind and headspace to be able to read a Panther book and for it to make any sense to them, especially like when we talk about revolutionary suicide. So when I expose you to the fact that you've been mentally fucked, now you get the difference. Before we even talk about revolutionary suicide, and when Huey breaks down reactionary suicide and revolutionary suicide, you already know. You already know where this can go, because I've shown you beforehand that you are manipulated, that you have been domesticated as a people. And so now when we go into that, it makes all the sense in the world as to why Huey would say that. So now you in the right place to want to absorb that book and read that book and actually read it, and it makes sense to you. And so I just wanted to give that breakdown. And then like I said, with the third element, when we talk about the shadow of the Panther, that's when we talk about COINTELPRO. And when we go into COINTELPRO and you learn that element, and we learn about the struggles that we're going to deal with, we also get into discipline. And there's also three within those perspectives. When I said embodiment, spirit, and shadow, we also break the different books down to what we call ideological, organizational, and combative. So we're still using a 3-level trifecta all the way across. And so each thing is addressing those different aspects. So we go back and forth. It's not you complete all of these, and then you complete all of these, and then you complete all of those. It's a back and forth conversation. You get a little bit of this so that you can get a little bit of that. Then you get a little bit of something else so you can get a little bit of this. It's so that we can create what we call a proper appetite. And then as you create that proper appetite, now these things can be digested better. Because, for instance, going into just talking about the 10-point platform, we've talked about this in the past, where a person can memorize the platform and they can say it verbatim. But then when you ask them, what does that mean? You lose them. Because just because I can memorize something don't mean I can embody it. That's why we start with the embodiment. And so it's a back and forth relationship with these books that we get into. So I just wanted to kind of set that tone.
You're always coming out trying to make nice. You go somewhere with that bullshit. Let me and Psych fight about some shit. They're always doing something. Yeah, and just for the record, like I said, that is the process, because all this shit we talking about came out of exactly that. And matter of fact, all of our relationship, the three of us, was cemented and developed very much by our cultural learnings at the time. So because we built around those things, because we were open to having those things and those ideas, we had a more profound interaction and relationship as we grew up to build on something that wasn't about the individual. We grew and developed that shit based on our understandings of that shit. Now, tell me my shit bullshit.
Now let me go through mine right quick. Let me go through mine. And again, I've already explained why. And when I was on vacation, I saw a few things. I learned and developed my understanding a whole lot more. I refined it. I think part of it was because of not having as many distractions as we have out here. I think another part of it was because I know another part of it was because I hate failing. I hate losing. So sitting incarcerated like I was, I did not want to be sitting there for the next decade, for the next decade and a half, for the next 2 decades, however much time I was going to have to do. I ended up doing 17, but I didn't want to be there and be ineffective. You know, I'd already bought into the ideal of being a revolutionary. Now I had been set down and I did not want to be ineffective. I still wanted to be able to do the work. So one of the things that I found people that was claiming that they was Panthers. Down in Texas prison, they had what's called a Panther Vanguard. According to the history that they gave me, it was founded by 3 older guys that was members of the original Black Panther Party. And these older guys wanted to start. They one of them I think split away and started what they call in prison the Mandingo Warriors, the M-Dub. And the other 2 stayed together and started the Panther Vanguard. And they built it and they initiated members and brought people into it anyway to get to the point. So when I met these people, they was able to give me that. And that was it. They did not have an understanding of a 10-point platform. They didn't know anything. So I had to get them a schooling in what a Panther was and the ideas and I even had one dude tell me, he said when he was getting ready to go home, he told me that he wasn't going to be able to be a Panther because he had to go home, get his life together, and raise his nephews, nieces and nephews. And I told him in response, you know how I can be. I'm so matter of fact that it can almost seem insulting and people think I'm being a butthole when I'm not. I'm just trying to be 100. But I told him, you're right. You know, you don't have the time to go home and be a Panther if you don't understand that being a Panther is supposed to help you get your life together and raise your nieces and nephews. If you don't understand that, then no, you don't have time to be a Panther. And I said all that to say this, that I think that we kind of think, even talk about recruiting. No, I don't believe in recruiting. I don't do the recruiting things. I don't do the recruiting. I don't do the protesting. I just don't. I see the value in it. It just not where I focus my energy at. I think that people have to focus their energy where their passion leads them. And one of the things that I realized was that just because a person is in the uniform does not mean that they understand what that uniform represents. A lot of these people that say they was in the Panther Vanguard, they really thought, just like the masses think, that a Black Panther and a Black Muslim are the exact same thing. They really thought that. They really didn't see a difference. They thought that Panthers was just Black Muslims. That's what they think. They don't have the ability to recognize that you're dealing with 2 different subcultures and 2 different groups. Yes, they came out of the same pain and they have a similar desire and a similar mission, but it's not the same organization. And a lot of these people had to be taught that. And that's why I use the books I use. And again, I use these books as lesson plans. I don't just use them as, let's read this book, woo, learn to what Huey did 30 years ago. No. If we can't see ourselves, our condition, our way out of our condition in the book, then there's no point even reading it. The book is useless. No, you got to go into the book and actually extract those lessons from the book. Like I just told you, the lesson I learned from the Asada book. I love that book. I don't know how many times I read it, but her being high in that park, and the Maoists, the Asian Maoists, had to save them from the pigs descending upon the park. You wasn't ready. And why wasn't you ready? She got another point in the book where she talks about going across that bridge, and that's where she got arrested at, where she got shot by the cop and all of that. And she said that she knew not to go across that bridge. She knew that the cops had a list of Panther cars and license plates in a book, in a Panther book. She knew that, but she decided to take a shortcut. It would be faster and easier to go across that bridge, and she just wanted to get to where she was going as fast as possible. This time, not taking a long route would be okay. And that would be the very time that they got stopped, they got arrested, people died, all of that happened because, and she said a revolutionary should never run while the sun sleeps. Basically, don't never take shortcuts, never BS. Those are lessons right there. And that's what I see in those books. And each of the books that I chose them for the lessons. One of the things that I started doing for the brothers down there in the pits of hell, what I started doing for those brothers is I started writing what can I call question and answer sheets, basically. You know, I might ask them what did Asada learn about being high about being high on weed in the park while being in a Panther uniform. And then I put the chapter that where you can find the answer. I might ask, what did Huey P. Newton say about his belief in God and the people? I put the chapter of revolutionary suicide where you can find that answer. What I want is I want you to think, was Huey P. Newton in the beef between Huey P. Newton and Stokely Carmichael, who was right and who was wrong? I want you to go think. I want you to go read the information, and I want you to think, and I want you to be ready to brother Ed. This where I use you as a proper example, the only time in life. I want you to argue to your point. I want you to argue it. I want you to think. I want you to look at it. Because some people, depending on what type of person you are, is going to side with Stokely Carmichael. Some people, depending on what kind of person you are going to side with Huey P. Newton. Now, what are the positives? What are the pros that we can get from both of them? What are the negatives from both of them? Can you see it? You know what I'm saying? And those are the things that I'm looking for when I'm looking at these books. I'm building a revolutionary. And I agree with you, E. If you're at a point where training the newly planted is not your thing, then yeah, it won't serve a purpose. That's why I say I felt like you went ahead and then started elementary. Because if you are and just like you, I'm not in an active chapter right now. But if you are in an active chapter and you have new recruits coming into the doors daily on a regular basis, you have to assume that you're dealing with people that don't really know yet, and you need to develop them to their knowledge. The greatest math teacher I ever had was a college math teacher. Crazy as this may sound, I've never understood math or even thought I was halfway good at it until I took college math. And the math teacher, the way he taught me, he taught me the way I've been waiting on somebody to teach me my entire life. You know, they might tell me, and I'm not going to get into a mathematical equation, but they might tell me this is this, and you solve it like this, and that's how you get the answer. And my question is always, why? Why did that work? Please explain to me that. Why did that work? Nobody ever would. From kindergarten to high school, nobody ever would. This dude came into the class, he said, I don't know you, talking to everybody. So I'm going to tell you how I teach. I'm going to assume you know nothing, and I'm going to start from the beginning. And the man literally started out with addition. Why 2 + 2 = 4? What the equal means, what that symbol means. 4 on this side and 2 + 2 on this side. The equal it represents this whole thing being an equation, and it means that what's on the left side is the exact same thing as what's on the right side. That's what it means. And this is how we solved for this. He broke all of it down, and it started making math make sense to me. Then when we went into algebra, he showed me we got an A over here. I never understood why A meant these. No, I never understood it. But understanding the concept of the equal sign, the exact same thing on this side, the law of the golden mean is what he called it. In mathematics, it's called the law of the golden mean. It means what's on the left side is the exact same thing as what's on the right side. And then he showed me how to solve for it. Now math started making sense. And that's all I'm talking about with my rendition of the book list. This is what I'm talking about. I'm assuming that a Panther walking through that door knows nothing and teach him everything. And they might know everything. You know, they might walk through the door and they might have the knowledge of the Ruba Benoit Hard. They might walk in the door with the knowledge of Geronimo Pratt, the experiences of Geronimo Pratt. They might walk in the door with the night where if Asada walked in, I would sit humbly and just hope she just started talking. You know what I'm saying? But the point I'm getting at is that you said it, E. You said it. It be tripping me out how y'all could say it and then run the opposite direction. You said it. The party has to be a revolutionary university. We have to develop it in a way that teaches and educates people to move to their next stages and their next levels. I'm with the leadership war, but you can't start off training people to be leaders out the gate. You have to start off training people to be receptive to learning out the gate. Then you can start building them toward leadership. Go ahead, War. Go ahead.
I got it real quick. I want to ask you, because what you jumping on, and then I think this even goes into one book we all agreed on the book list, and it has to do with autobiography of Malcolm X.
Yes.
A person needs to be, in order to even just deal with any of the stuff that we talk about, no matter which way you go, there's a certain study habit that has to be there in order to equip them to be able to go into these lessons. And I think you kind of talked about it a little bit. You at least introduced it a little bit when you talk about that math professor. Where do we start with that? because before you even dive into a book list, I need to have a proper study habit. Give me an example of that.
Well, I think we kind of talked. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying a teaching that.
Oh, well, I think we kind of talked about it in the last video that we dropped when we dealt with the process, when I was talking about the science of building and the that I developed for the Uhuru Shule. I developed that for that reason because I knew that I was dealing with people. I was dealing with people. I think that I was in a I don't want to say a worse position because that might not be true because there's pros and cons of both positions, you know. But what we're dealing with, what I was dealing with brothers who had never read, who had never in their life read anything serious after school. And then when they was in school, most of them didn't read then. They probably copied off people's papers and fell asleep on the desk. These guys, a lot of them did not know that they had the level of intellect that they discovered after going through those lessons. So you're dealing with people, not you, at least, I tend to think that when you walk through that door and make up a decision or start thinking about joining a Panther chapter, that you've at least read a book or two. I would like to just believe that. I had read a couple of books.
You can want to believe that.
Yeah, I tend to believe that that's what will lead you into that door on some level, that you done read a book or two. But a lot of the old brothers I was with hadn't read anything. Not only had they not read anything, I used to run into this problem. And the brothers originally thought I was trying to be funny and I was trying to embarrass them. But we would all be sitting at a table like we doing right now, and we'd be building. And I might open the dictionary up and I might pass it to one brother, and I might pass this book to another brother, and I already have the pages marked. And I say, okay, brother, read that definition for me. And at times, brothers would storm away from the table angry after they try to read the definition. After they would stumble through the words and economic recession, economic recession. Somebody might say recessions. Oh yeah, okay, economic recession, and they'll storm off. And then I started to start realizing like, a lot of these brothers can't really read. They haven't developed these skills. So I had to stop doing that to people. They thought I was being funny. They would be mad at me because they'd be embarrassed. So I had to, again, like I said, I had to go back. I had to go all the way back and start with the development. I created something called vocab rehab. I'm lying, I didn't create it. I got it from one of the brothers. He came with the idea or the name for it, and we developed that vocab rehab. Where I started them to taking so many. It's been so long I can't remember what it was, but rehabbing their vocabulary. And with the rehabilitation of their vocabulary, it made the process of reading a whole lot easier. Then we was able to read and study. And I started them with the 10 virtues of a student. That was the core of their reading. And they vocab rehab. They used the 10 virtues of a student to vocab rehab and to develop their reading skills. And then we moved on to healthier reading. To ask that question about a Panther, I think I would use the 10-point platform for that. I think I would use the 10-point platform for their vocab rehab and for their reading development, and then move them on to deeper reading and critiquing even the stuff that they're reading. But yeah, the format that I expressed in the last video when I talked about the science of building, that's why I wrote it. I wrote it because I was dealing with people. I even wrote another thing called it's called the algorithm of consciousness. That's what it's called. And in the algorithm of consciousness, it actually lists or breaks down steps for developing people's consciousness. Because these was all questions that I had to ask myself. And I was tasked with doing this alone. It was me. I was doing it. So I'm sitting up there. So when okay, all right, let me get this. All right, okay, I can go about it this way. And I started developing these tools to help train the brothers in the development of their intellect. And a lot of these brothers was extremely intelligent. A lot of these brothers started to realize how intelligent they were. I talk about it all the time. We didn't have Brother Rich on the show. Well, I developed the 10 virtues of a student, and I'm the person that everybody got it from in some way, form, or fashion. Brother Rich was the best of the 10 virtues of a student, better than me. He knew them better than me. He could recite them backwards. You know, our person just talking, they say, I can recite it front and backward. He could literally recite it backwards. You know, the matter of fact, in the ability that he developed, you know, and I'm pretty sure coming up or growing up, he never knew he had that ability. But his ability to develop that skill inspired, and not only inspired him to develop even higher, but inspired other people. So, you know, we have to start on that format. Uh, I want y'all to understand, and I want the listening audience to understand that I use a lot of Panther books, Panther related books, not because I believe that Panther knowledge is all the knowledge that people ever going to need. That I don't believe that at all. You'll be flawed as an organization if you're walking around and all you have is Panther knowledge. You'll be flawed. But I see something that I think needs rectifying. One, I think people need to understand what kind of organization they're joining. You know, all those people that said, I'm not going to read anything from a dead person, EU is 100% right. Those people shouldn't even have been allowed to be there, especially in a leadership position, because you're going 100% against what Huey taught when he said the gorilla is the perfect man. The gorilla is both the political theoretician and the military fighter. All you want to be is the military fighter. You have to be able to be the political theoretician. And to be a political theoretician, you have to understand political theory. You have to understand it. And if you don't, how can you call yourself a proper gorilla? It's impossible. So these are things that I saw. And another thing I saw since I've been home is the splintering of the Panther movement, the splintering and the damage that has been done to Panther unity. To me, that's insane. There's no way you can unite a people or teach people unity, and you can't even come together and come to an agreement of what you're supposed to be building on. All these different Panther splinters and Panther fractions, to lead credence to what he said, they're still operating off individual egoism. They're still operating off that. They haven't learned how to develop a super ego, and that's not meaning that your ego just become bigger. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about super ego in the sense of Freud when he talked about super ego, and that's just understand or developing a united super organism type of mind hive mindset with the rest of the people that at least supposed to be in your organization. But one thing that I think that we, and that's why we and while we are in developmental stages for these type of teachings and lessons and debates, is at least they should be able to unite around the concept of re-evolution. They should at least be able to unite around that concept, if nothing else. Every Panther faction should have that in common, that we want to re-evolve our community, period, point blank. Whether you think that Black nationalism is your end all to see all, Pan-Africanism is it, Dr. Khalid Muhammad did it the best, I'm a Panther, but all praise to Elijah Muhammad, whatever it is that keeps you foundated. I don't care. I don't really care. But one of the things that all of that should be leading you to is the re-evolution of the community, period, point blank. And if you ain't that, then there should be no reason for you to have a uniform on. But I said all that to say, and that's why I put the books on the list, because you have so many people from all these different factions. And I'm not saying you got to put your Elijah Muhammad down. I'm not saying you have to put your Pan-Africanism down, your culture down. I'm not saying any of that. You can stay 100% unapologetically African. You can pray 5 times a day, whatever it is that you do. Whatever it is that you do. But if you really want to be an effective Panther, you need to understand what it is, what it means, and how to evolve it to the next level. Because I'm also not saying that we should try to remimic and recreate the Panther Party from 33, 35 years ago. I'm not saying that either. That to me would be insane. Or is it almost 40 years now? It's 40 some years now, ain't it? Yeah. It's yeah. But anyway, anyway, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I think that foundation should be in that understanding. Like I say, I chose books that I think shows the development of Panthers, people that we consider OG Panthers. It shows their development. It shows their mistakes. Autobiography for Malcolm X. Look at what it shows us about who he was and how he developed and how he grew. And the Judas Factor, again, I use the Judas Factor because in this book, in the Judas Factor, it shows you and it breaks down not only how they took out, it gives you a theory. It gives you a theory. One thing we got to understand, theory is not always false. Theory is not, that's not what theory means. People think when they hear theory, they think, oh, that's not fact. You know, that's not true of what theory is, but it gives you a theory of who and how how and why Malcolm X was taken out. But deeper than that, deeper than just reading about Malcolm, you learn about the COINTELPRO, you learn about the techniques and strategies that the United States government uses against revolutionaries, and you learn the history and the background. Like he said it before, he said that if you want to understand the Panther Party, you got to understand the nation. If you want to have a deeper understanding of the nation, you got to understand the UNIA. You know, and the Judas Factor shows us that Marcus Garvey, I mean not Marcus Garvey, but Elijah Muhammad, Farad Muhammad, even Noble Drew Ali, all of these people was members of the UNIA. United Negro Improvement Association. We have this mystical idea that some mystical dude just appeared on the planet and was walking around selling rugs, and most people, that's something we do as African people. We've always told truths. We've always told truths, and not necessarily historical fact, but in metaphorical truths. We told these truths through fables, metaphors, parables, and what's the word I'm looking for? Similes. We told these truths in those ways. And that's all that is, because Elijah Muhammad and Farad Muhammad met in the UNIA. Sekou Touré from Africa came over here and built in the UNIA. Kwame Nkrumah came over here from Africa and built and studied in the UNIA. I didn't say the wrong name, did I? Saw he look at me kind of funny. No, that's the right name. That's the right name. All of these people built in the UNIA. Even I forget the Vietnamese guy name. He came and built with the UNIA. All of these different people built with the UNIA. When they ran Marcus Garvey out of the country and the UNIA started to crumble, people like Noble Drew Ali split apart, took lessons he learned from the UNIA, and built the Moorish Science Temple. He built the Moorish Science Temple again, where Elijah Muhammad and them went to and built for a little while at first, and then he split from the Moorish Science Temple, learning more knowledge there, and then established the Nation of Islam. There's a lot of stuff that happened historically that shows you that bloodline, and all that's in that book, The Judas Factor. That's why I have that book on there. It's not just on there to wax poetic about what somebody did 40, 50, 60 years ago. It's on there for us to take those old lessons and build on top of them, for us to learn and understand. And I use that book for a reason, because there's a lot of people that are in Panther uniforms now with a Nation of Islam background. There's a lot of people. I see too much of, I see, and I'm not saying too much of it in a bad way. I'm saying we have to understand what has come into the party. And if these people are truly sincere about being Panthers and being effective at it, it's necessary for them to start learning who and what they're representing. I think that's very important. And then like my step one, or my step two, goes more, and I'm not going to get into it, but goes more into what E says is extremely important. And it is extremely important. It is extremely important, but it goes into that. Now, value contributing to civilization. And my step two is not just cultural, because I also got Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson in my step two. I also got Blueprint for Black Power by Angus M. Wilson in my step two. You know, I got these in my step two, and I got those in my step two for a reason, because we talked about it last week, or we talked about it in the last video we did. We talk about the difference between a runaway slave and a liberator. A runaway slave knows I'm uncomfortable in this position I'm in. I want to get away from it. He don't care which direction he running. Like Malcolm said, he don't care which direction he run. He said anywhere has to be better than being here with this cruel slave master. But a liberator kind of knows where he's going. You know, he has a moral, political, and economic imperative. He kind of know where he's trying to go. You know, Powernomics, you know, he understands where he's trying to go. He knows what he's trying to build. He knows what he's trying to organize, and he knows why he's trying to organize it. You understand? He's founded and rooted in his culture. Now, value contributing to civilization. When the World Was Black, part 1 and part 2. Those are on my part 2. He knows who he is and what he's trying to re-erect. He knows what he lost, and he knows what he's trying to bring back to life. He knows that he's trying to re-evolve the community. He knows that. And, you know, that's why I went in the direction I went in.
I want to say this real quick, because I think what's important, especially to the other Panthers that are listening, is a lot of the de-evolution that has taken place over the years has to do with the fact that some of the newer generation Panthers wasn't able to recognize the reasoning why we study. It kind of goes into me when I think about the difference between understanding, understanding, and overstanding. Too often, Panthers are coming aboard using as a crutch, using the legacy of what the Panthers did as their foundation to exist as a Panther. So they simply only understand Panthers. It's like somebody basically being gifted a car. I'm gifted this vehicle. All I need to do is learn how to drive it. But I'm taking advantage and I'm actually operating from a position of entitlement because I take for granted the actual power of what I'm actually driving, what I'm controlling. I literally take it for granted because I didn't have to learn what it was. I didn't have to learn it inside out before you handed me the keys. So I really don't have a respect for what it is. I just feel like because I'm Black and because I want to and want to be a Panther, that I'm entitled to be a Panther, not realizing that the legacy that I'm supposed to stand on those shoulders and I'm supposed to revolve it and build it and grow it. So I only understand Panther, what it means to be a Panther. Whereas when you talk about the understanding of a Panther, basically that means I need to know what it takes to maintain the legacy, at least even the where it was when it was handed off to me. And overstanding means I need to know how to grow the Panther Party beyond where it was when it was handed over to me. So a lot of the new people that come in, they only understand. Going back to that motor vehicle example, all they know how to do, you hand them keys and they know how to drive a car. They know what do you do to somebody before you hand them the keys? You teach them a basic safety course. But that don't teach them how to be tactical drivers. That don't teach them how a motor is. That don't teach them how to change the oil. That don't teach them how to maintain a vehicle. And then when you talk about overstanding, now that's somebody that actually can take the concept of various raw materials and actually build an engine, actually build a transmission, actually come up with a tire, actually put all of these different things, these different inventions and these different raw materials together and create what's called a motor vehicle. That is on a whole new level. So a good percentage of people that come into the party, and this is just based on even leadership, have not had an understanding or overstanding of what it means to be a Panther. They don't have Panther ideology. They simply are living off of the legacy of what it meant to be a Panther, not even knowing, even really knowing what that meant. So they would hand the keys to the kingdom, and all they thought they had to do was drive. And that because this vehicle that they driving has this Panther symbol on it, everybody was going to automatically give them their respect, give them their props, and treat them like a Panther. So and so when we talked about one of the things that attract people to it is that legacy. And like the difference between what we sometimes find now is, and that goes back to me saying, yeah, you would like to think that somebody read a book about the Panthers, but in all actuality, too many people have just simply watched the movie or watched the video. And now they think they like what they saw in that video. And they may have picked up a book, started reading it, started dealing with it, but because they haven't had the proper research skill and the proper and took academics for advantage. They for granted. I mean, they took academics for granted, so they didn't even learn how to learn. They simply went through school, learned what they needed to learn in order to get a job, but they take the concept of learning for granted because to them, learning something has to do with an attachment to a dollar. And so therefore, the only thing that they did learn and they gave value to was something that could turn around and put money in their pocket. Because of that, they've taken academics for granted. So now when you give them something that has to deal with politics, that has to do with self-governance, that has to do with freeing the people, that has to do with liberating the mind, they don't know how to ingest that information because you can't attach a dollar to it. So you can't create an appetite and you can't create a drive within them that they can feel in order to embody what it means to be a Panther. And so, unfortunately, even going back to what you said, and I'm glad you said it, You ran into elders that was in prison that you had to teach. I've come into the same scenario to where I've had to teach OG Panthers what it means to be a Panther, and they older than me. This is because a lot of people that became Panthers get this pass just because they've been able to say, hey, I was a Panther back in the 60s, or I was a Panther back in the 90s, or whenever. And simply because they were a Panther, they feel like they're unapproachable, that they can't be questioned, that their knowledge is supreme without even knowing that they got some goddamn knowledge. And because of that mentality that has eroded what it means to be a Panther over the years, because Panthers have, for whatever reason, not enough elder Panthers pass on the wisdom of learning, the wisdom of teaching, going back to the university concept we talked about. It's like that's been destroyed. So the Panther 48 is here to help rebuild that. And like Brother Sykes said, when we talk about re-evolution, every Panther, regardless of your formation, should be able to take these skills we're talking about, ingest these principles we're talking about, and make your formation more powerful. All we talking about things that it takes in order to be a progressive Panther, living a Panther lifestyle, really being what it means to be a Panther and a revolutionary. These are the things that it takes. Because what we're talking about doing is taking this thing not to the level of understanding, not only to understand, but to overstand. Because we are supposed to be able to add to a foundation and build the next story. And then that story needs to be rebuilt. That's why we call it foundational generational advancement. If each generation is not able to deal with a foundation and then take that foundation and pass it on, and then have that foundation be able to support another story, another level of growth, then what is it that we're doing? Are we really just feeding our own personal ego and our own selfish point of view, and being able to say, hey, I'm a Panther, and actually I do a goddamn thing for the people, like he said, or you need to be serving the people? Are we really doing that? Or is it that we are just actually measuring ourselves and our self-worth based upon the simple fact that the next person down the block don't even know what it is to be a Panther, and because I am quote unquote part of an organization or a structure that calls itself Panthers, I'm better off. I'm not doing a damn thing to serve the people. I'm not doing a damn thing to bring us any closer to liberation. I am literally just being a crab in a barrel, just being really just another level of a nigga. And so we have to get out of that. As Panthers, we have to raise the bar. Part of the reason why the Panther 48 is having these classes and open this up on a public platform is because when the people know what it means to be a Panther, then Panthers have to know what it means to be a Panther. If the people know your obligations to be a revolutionary, then you can't walk around and confuse and fool the public no more. Later for that. Now is the time for Panthers to be Panthers. And the community needs to know what a Panther is supposed to be. So if you think you're going to operate under this capacity anymore and not do what's really needed to be done as a Panther, it ain't finna happen. The community is going to hold you accountable.
Straight from the Brooklyn streets where they could see me at. Where it's never easy at, that's the borough we be at. Real hitters keep the strap for any type of beef or spat. Make your head tilt back like N.B.P.P hat. That's where we gon' leave you at, make them take a leaky nap. Anytime that we attack, you don't want a piece of that. That thug mentality can be an aphrodisiac. But you're doing too much, homie, please relax. Don't make this animal damage you, animal banish you. Handle you flammable like a match. Do a candle, do with words, I'll be your man if you plan to do any anamical acting against the intangible. You must be sniffing albino. Realize I'm a G, you just Joe. Realize that's Mike, but not Dino. Samoye, not Wino.
So I just wanted to get that off my chest.
True indeed, true indeed. And before we close out, I want to say this. Y'all heard 3 different viewpoints of how to store it. Because the brother asked in the question in the comments, what would be a good book list for new and elder Panthers? And you just heard 3 different points of view, and we argued why we thought these points of view was the way to start. So we need, if you made it this far, that means that you wanted to learn, you're sitting here, you're paying attention, you're looking for some growth and development, and I'm asking you to participate. Get in the comment section and tell us, which one do you go with? Do you go with Brother War and the leadership and critical thinking? Do you go with Brother Sight and the foundation on Panther history, or do you go with Brother E and the foundation on the people's history and the development of culture for the purpose of unity? We all gave you our arguments. We'd like to know in the comments which one do you think makes more sense? Because we're developing this. We could have came with just a completed book list, boom, but we want to show you a process of development, a process. And what we are also developing, we have an old video, one of our most watched videos, and it's not actually a video. It's something that you can listen to while you're working out, while you're jogging. I mean, if you're a Panther and a revolutionary, this should be just a part of your normal daily routine, working out and training. If you add Brother Sight, I really believe working out and training should be a normal part of your routine. You should look more like a Panther than a pig. And I'm just gonna keep it 100. You should look more like a Panther than like a pig. But while you're working out, while you're cleaning up around the house, yeah, we gotta be real. While you clean up around the house, while you're out there gardening, you can listen to it. It's called "What is a Revolutionary?" And in that, it's one we used to do a blog talk radio, and it's that video. You can find it on this channel, and we go over an idea called re-evolution. We talk about, just to give a quick synopsis, we talk about that evolution is a natural process that has been embedded into nature, that all living organisms, whether those organisms are individuals or communities of people, they automatically evolve. They seek to get better. He might develop a process of gardening. And as he develops that and teaches that to the youth in the community, that youth in the community will take what he taught and add to it based on developmental learning. There will be a process of what do they call it in finances? Einstein said the most
I'm
powerful
broke,
thing
so I don't know.
created in the universe, compound interest. So we'll develop on a level, we'll compound our understanding and our learning. This is a natural part of evolution. They might take what he was doing and add to it and make it better. Then the next generation would do the same thing and they will make it better. This is a natural process that would take place unless something unnatural happens, meaning that something from outside itself has to come in and interrupt your evolution. It has to arrest your development. It has to stop you from growing in the way that God, nature, evolution meant for you to grow. That thing that stops you from growing, we call that de-evolution, because there's no such thing as stagnation. You're either growing or you're dying, period, point blank. So if anything outside of your community, outside of your people comes in and stop you from growing, they have de-evolved you. And when that happens, there will always be a small percentage of people, a small, very small percentage of people that just simply does not go along with the plan. They are gonna wrestle against it. They're gonna be able, even if they don't comprehend what it is, they're gonna say something's not right. Something's not right. I think we can do better than this. Something just ain't right. That person restarts evolution, or they at least attempt to. That's what we're calling re-evolution. That's what we're calling that. That person that attempts to do that are re-evolutionaries. That's what they are. They want to bring evolution back. They are re-evolutionaries. And that's the one thing, no matter what faction you're coming from, what spinoff you're coming from, I don't care what it is. If you think or call yourself a revolutionary, you should be 100% with us on this whole re-evolution thing. So watch that video. I should see the numbers go up on that video from the real learners, and go learn what that process is, because we discuss what is a revolutionary. We talk about these ideas, and give us in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, go in the comments and tell us, do you go with E, do you go with P, or do you go with W? Whose reading list do you think needs to be established? E, P, or W? That's all you got to put in the comments. E, P, or W. And with that, this was your Panther for that E. Did you have anything you want to say before we close out?
I'm groovy.